where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
With the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that.
For this next segment, this is actually coming straight from the horse's mouth in regard to the Foundry in general, the Foundry design. Now, so this is more of a riff. I'm not like there's no real script here. I'm just looking at the Foundry ebook and the 2 pages and kind of giving a little bit more insight into things, and hopefully it'll come out to where this gets published and or this comes out with the actual sermon itself, and we'll see how that goes. But in general, the idea of the Foundry is to essentially platform groups of people, platform and empower locals, right, as individuals for certain, but more so the idea of platforming and empowering groups of people. And that's going to be very, very much a tremendous focus here. So when it comes down to the idea behind guilds, tribes, and why those are so instrumental to really moving anywhere within the Foundry, there are systems in place that make sure that you are essentially helping to fulfill the promise of the Foundry, which is one, to end corruption, Finis Corruptionis, but also two, to simply make sure that people, this system is creating an environment that generates Renaissance people, true Renaissance people. And there's a few ways in which guilds and tribes do that. One, when it comes down to the idea of the lone wolf, that is very much pro that, whether those people consciously realize it or not, that idea of the archetype of really idolizing the concept of a lone wolf, that is pro-corruption. Okay, because the idea here is that you may move fast, you may move a lot faster by yourself in a certain sense. And I will understand, you understand that, but as a group, you will move further, much further. And I'm not talking about further as in the difference between one lifetime that you live. If we gave you another lifetime to live, you can get so much. No, we're talking about magnitudes further. Okay, when we're talking about the idea and the concept of a Renaissance person, you have to understand this right here, this point that we're living right now, it is going to echo. That's the concept, and it's going to echo well into the future. And we're talking about like when we talk about the way we study the Renaissance of the Renaissances of the past, the Harlem Renaissance, the Italian Renaissance, those things are going to be shadowed in terms of what we see with this concept of the Foundry. And that right there is very, the reason why I can say that with such confidence is because it is not built on the individuals that actually make up the Foundry. It's built on the systems that the Foundry support. The idea here is that you being involved in particular groups and having involvement in groups makes a tremendous difference, and it does make this possible in terms of truly delivering on the promise of, one, ending this this prevalence of corruption in society, but also the idea of people being able to simply just we'll say living in an environment that really does contribute and create sick sickness and benefit off of creating that sickness in so many different ways. We're not just talking about medically, even though that's very much real, but also the idea here of what it means as a when it comes down to this environment. Being a part of groups is very much instrumental to this. So, and that's kind of if we're talking about just the fundamentals, right? The fundamentals of the guilds and the tribes, it is to empower groups of people to transform the world around them, right? Particularly, I like the idea of starting with the local, and I'm going to do everything I can to try to prioritize that and try to incentivize that through the actual design of itself, right? And any contributions that you guys have, please, by all means, leave it in the comments. We can, surely have a conversation at the very least. But when it comes down to this idea of the support systems, and it is built, the Foundry is built on tribes. It is literally built to provide a physical element to the progression that you make towards being a Renaissance person. Okay, so literally there are going to be more things available to people who are taking part in the renovation of society. They're to a higher and a more serious degree. And that right there is, I'm not talking with someone that is based in the societal intelligence that we have today. That's very important that you understand that, because there's a very real, there's a very real ignorance regarding the value of certain things in society, right? Regarding around just the basic human, what they're able to do, of course, but also revolving, I think, one of the main things, I think, is the idea and the concept of artistry, the concept of creatives in general, what they're doing. We kind of don't understand that as well, but also next to the artists or the creatives, we also have the idea for the people who are nonprofit workers, those people who are teachers. They should not have to struggle in a society in any way, shape, or form, and that's a kind of the system that the Foundry is going to promote in general. And I can go for hours and hours, but the idea here is, what are the foundational guilds and what role do they play in the Foundry system as I see it today? One, we have this idea and this concept around Earth Nation. Okay, this concept of Earth Nation is really built on repairing our relationship with the world in general, right? And the concept here is that we need to become symbiotes to the world in so many different ways. They're giving very, very real, that, like I said, well, they're a foundational guild, so it kind of tells you the idea of how important they are to this concept. But just to give you an understanding, things like what I'm expecting and what I really want to design toward is really different Foundry developments competing to who has the most clean surface water available in their particular way, who has the the highest concentration of people who understand, like, the food growth and how that impacts the land in certain ways. These are things that we're talking about here, and also who has the most actual biodiversity in regard to the number of animal or the different types of animals that can coexist with humans and that they allow to coexist. Not necessarily saying that these people have to have these, as pets, because a lot of animals do carry different diseases, obviously. So we'll have to we're carrying that understanding through the, things like parks and stuff like that. But that's the idea, and I think that gives a pretty. Also the idea of apothecaries as well. We don't have that concept. Like that, I went to cities where they don't even know where apothecaries are, and if you don't know what apothecary is, I recommend you look it up, because it is essentially just the herbalized version of what a pharmacy is, basically, right? Those things, apothecaries play a tremendous role in the health of society in so many different ways. I don't want to go off the deep end there, but please look it up, and if you have any questions, you can ask it in the comments. But the idea here is the Earth Nation. The Earth Nation is going to be there's going to be kind of a base, a base with the Earth Nation in the apothecaries. Okay, so with the foundational apothecaries, or the relationships that the Foundry builds with existing apothecaries in the nation, or in the actual area. So that's the Earth Nation. When we talk about Pluto Company, that is it's built on basically the idea of local journalists, reporters, and investigators. And these people are, there is going to be, I'm not going to go off the deep end here, because I feel like this whole segment could be about one different guild, a different foundational guild or tribe. But the idea here is that the people, when it comes down to local media and the local understanding, there's a system within the Foundry, so I kind of do have to explain a little bit about this. There's a system in the Foundry that's built on kind of a, it's not, there's going to be another system that runs in conjunction with the internet if all goes well. But the idea here is that it's going to be a mesh network that runs with the Foundry. And there's going to be a few complications with that we'll kind of have to work through. That's kind of what we're depending on. But the idea here is that this mesh network is going to really prioritize local reporters, investigators, and journalists, and have those the more national news as more background noise in terms of what could happen in general. And just another segment, I'm hoping to design for this world a society that actually the local politicians will be just as the way we treat local politics versus national politics will be flipped on its head. That's what I'm trying to design for, and Pluto Company is one of the primary drivers for that. So the idea here is that there'll be journalists, investigators, and reporters that make that possible, and they will work with creative guilds, which I have not put in here, but they are very much foundational in a certain way. The idea of me not actually putting a label to them is that I think the last thing you want to do is like put a solid label on a group of creatives and say, oh, this is you guys or whatever, and not give them that power to define themselves. But that's the idea here. This is, the partnership is going to be very much instrumental, so it kind of tells you that the creative guilds, the prevalence of creative guilds and tribes are going to be definitely necessary in terms of the Foundry in general, but they're not listed here, except for, the Harmonious is something, but they're not exactly what we're talking about here. But they could definitely play a role in the partnership that Pluto Company really needs. And this is so this is Pluto Company, and I'm gonna cap it there. the next company or the next guild or the tribe is the Bookmen, right? And the Bookmen are official Foundry. They're kind of the official maintenance guild for the Foundry, but they're also kind of the record keepers, right? And the idea here is that they will store, categorize information about, of course, what's, stuff. Guilds like the Pluto Company can rely on them as kind of being the, the storage for what goes on, the record keeper just in general. But also other guilds can rely on them as record keepers as well. So when it comes down to the guilds and tribes and the way they exist, they may have to fulfill some kind of understanding with the bookmen to say, okay, these things we have to keep these things in certain records. And the idea of being a maintenance guild, they're also going to be involved in things like, say for instance, the concept around any of the, the data surrounding the Foundry that needs to be stored, how they're stored, how they're categorized. That falls in the bookman category, and also how just the general upkeep for the Foundry is. Okay, so literally, like, the bookmen can be people who just are very specialized in just data storage, but they could also be people who are just simply doing janitorial work around the Foundry. And I say simply, kind of, it's not going to be simple, because the idea here is that they're to be a janitor in the Foundry. It's more so kind of a concept of having an understanding with, cleanliness, the way things are clean, stuff like that, but also they'll have to have an understanding of, say, for instance, the world of kind of the herbal world, or the kind of the Earth Nation type archetype there. The idea here is that they'll be able to do and exist as janitors, but say for instance, they'll also have an understanding of the plant life that we coexist with, of the in terms of, say for instance, you're about to have like an open house at a particular hotel, and you want to hire like somebody to go through and make sure the place is ready. Hiring somebody from the bookmen, that there's going to be an understanding that, okay, they could kind of go through and tell you, like, okay, this is what we want to do. These are the the particular plants that we're going to put in these particular areas for certain things, or particular herbs that we're going to put in certain areas to have certain impacts. And I feel like I'm gonna go off on the deep end there, but if I keep going there, so I'm gonna kind of but the idea here is that they're going to be involved in record keeping, cleaning, and also record keeping for guilds, tribes, but also individuals. Say for instance, you have someone who's about to pass away, but they haven't told their story. They haven't really they're able to talk to and kind of create an understanding with the bookman to say, hey, look, this is what I want to leave behind. This is the story. And also kind of pair that with the idea of, for instance, the graveyard, in terms of these are the stories that they leave behind. And there's another rabbit hole there that I'm walking around, but the idea here is that they'll be able to leave behind their stories, but also skill sets, stuff like that they want to kind of capture and record if they feel like these things aren't really, I don't want, if they really want to teach something. And the idea here is they won't leave, they'll leave behind this particular skill set just in case, the world needs it for whatever particular idea. But an example is basically nobody, I was a draftsman for a certain period of time, or a designer, and my manager didn't talk about they didn't a lost art in this particular field of design, right? So when we're talking about like home design, engineering, architecture, stuff like that, is the idea of draftsmanship and paper, pencil, paper, or that concept in general of what it means to take a pencil to paper and create something. That is a lost art, right? A lot of people are moving to AutoCAD, but not a lot of people understand, the paper and the pencil. What's the difference? What do you want to do? What are the elements that are important to creating a blueprint if you're only using pencil and paper? That's kind of a thing. But that's one thing. For instance, if you have somebody who's kind of like, they're older and they want to leave that behind and kind of build that into their particular legacy, that would be a way to do that. Also, the idea of the harmonist. And we talked a little bit about this. I think there's a little bit of overlap, but the idea of the harmonist is that it's local musicians, and that's it, right? And the Foundry, the hierarchy system for this is there's basically, hey, I've been here for X amount of time, but there is no bureaucracy in place, right? You're not gonna simply just get this particular position because you've position of power over other people. You may get a more solid position in terms of benefits in the Foundry, but you're not going to be able to control and have just other people suck up to you because you give them access to more platform or anything like that. But the idea here is that once you're in the harmonist, the idea here is that we right now, the way that this Foundry is designed is to only play local music, only play music from the locals, okay? And to also have a system of kind of reviewing and, leaving ratings and stuff like that for the musicians to listen to, and incentivizing people to give honest and real feedback so the musicians can really start to mold themselves. Or simply just realize hey, maybe I'm too sensitive to be in this field, or and can't hear these things. That's the idea, right? So there's so much more with the idea of the Foundry, but like I said, if we're talking about fundamentals, right? We're talking about what you can definitely take and use. The concept is that locals need to be empowered. Right, that's the concept here. There are lots of different pieces that the Foundry has in general, but the concept, the fundamental concept is that you'll never hear Sleepy badmouth you as long as you're working with the fundamentals of locals being empowered, right? And you're not playing, we get what we want here, so we'll allow corruption there. I don't like that. You won't hear anything. You might not hear anything bad about it, but you might not hear anything good about it if that's the case, depending on, and that's the best case if you're playing that game. If you play that game a little too hard, then you might hear something. You might hear something bad because at that point, if you basically wash away the idea of the good with the concept of give and take for the bad, and we'll have a problem there. But other than that, I want to say that that's the fundamental. Platforming locals, creating systems around locals being empowered, right? The Foundry itself, just to give you guys an understanding, is the idea here is that I started this idea, this concept to say this is the good, what the internet can do to improve the health of society, the health of everyone in society, and that's that's what the Foundry was built on. Guilds and tribes became fundamental to that because groups of people are going to be a lot more powerful than the individuals, right? And that's a very well way to think about it. Some people say we live in an individualistic society, and in a lot of ways that's very true. But I want you guys to understand, I'm not necessarily anti-capitalism or pro-communism, or pro-communism and anti-capitalism. I think there needs to be a balance that works. So in terms of actually like living, when it comes down to communism, living in community, right? That was kind of a thing and a concept behind that. And sorry for anybody who's like, who understands the concept of communism very well, to an extent to where you're kind of like cringing at that particular swath that I'm kind of driving there. But the idea here is that we have to develop a way to balance the two. Capitalism doesn't work when when everyone works on that particular idea, right? So when companies can pay politicians, you can see how that would be a very big problem. If you don't believe so, you can look around at today. So we have to create that balance. And I'm going to go off the deep end, if anything, but if I keep this up. So that's it. Thank you. If anything, I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
With the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that.